Thank you for auditing the always positive, unedited new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing the album Maps by Billy Woods and Kenny Segal. I asked on Instagram how to pronounce his last name. Everyone says Segal, so I hope that's right. Now, you might be wondering, it's noon and the album came out this morning at midnight. How can I possibly have is this going to be an hour-long video? This is going to be a long one. How can I possibly have such a long video ready so quickly? Well, I should say up front, I was granted early access to this album. Kind of a big deal, I guess. The record company reached out to me, and I'm very honored that they did. Fat Possum, thank you for that. And so I've been listening to this album for the last week, and it's exciting. I was hesitant to say yes because I only do positive reviews, so I don't want some record company to give me something to have me listen to it, and then I don't like it, and then I'm stuck with it. But seriously. Was I not going to like the new Billy Woods? Everything I've heard, everything from Arm & Hammer, every one of his solo projects is good enough that I took an educated guess, and it turns out that I loved it. Now, even though I've had a week to sit with this, I always preface everything I do when I talk about Billy Woods' work as a rough draft. And I say that because his work is so rich and so deep that there can be more that should be said. I might even revisit this album later. But also because, for better and for worse, Billy Woods is maybe the most academic-friendly rap artist. By that I mean we'll probably have the most written about him by academics. Now that sounds like that's an insult to Woods, and I imagine that Woods might take it that way because it implies a certain distance or a certain kind of, I guess distance from the streets, distance from his roots or whatever, but it's actually the failing of academia. So the fact that most hip-hop scholars don't understand that they should be writing about Kodak Black as much, if not more, than about Billy Woods just shows that academics don't have the kind of imagination I like to think they have. It's very easy as an academic to approach Billy Woods' work because Billy Woods is very educated and raps in a very educated way, etc. So that's why it's a rough draft. I went back just for fun to look at my last reviews of Woods' work, and I really emphasize the idea that he's the child of professors, and that puts him in league with Earl Sweatshirt and Kanye, and sometime there should be something done about rappers who are children of professors. What does it mean? I put a lot of emphasis on the fact that he's African and African American, sort of having a bicultural identity, which very few rappers do, and the fact that he's a great poet, the fact that he's a master storyteller, able to weave the personal and the universal, and that his flow has this great variation in levels of emphasis. But what amazed me about Maps is how different it actually is than the other two solo projects I've reviewed. I mean, Ethiop, really, and in hindsight, this seems to be really true, a lot of it's about the sort of international blackness, negritude, history of slave trade, dehumanization, exoticism, the kind of modern slavery of free market capitalism. Church, which I liked, but definitely less. It's a lot more sort of bittersweet memories of early adulthood and childhood and spirituality and a lot of self-medication. I ended up watching watching movies and reading books. I bought this book and read it because of the church review, but it's not going to come in handy. This album isn't really about all that stuff. This album is totally different. This album really feels like this is almost an autobiography, almost a description of what Woods is going through right now, about what it's like to have just gone on tour and what observations he makes about himself, about travel, about existence itself, and about the human race, humanity. Not blackness, not whiteness. Where did we go wrong as human beings? It turns out we probably went wrong the first time we sat by a fire, picked a piece of corn, and domesticated an animal. It turns out that's probably where we went wrong, and that's one of the big themes on this album. So these are all the things that he discovers. So it's about a tour. Very much it's a guide along, like you follow him in his tour through Europe and through America. A lot of it is about the distance that he has from the person that he loves. Unclear. There's someone who he refers to as his baby's mother, who seems like he refers to as an ex. It's a very unclear relationship. It's very ambiguous. I have lived a long-distance relationship from somebody who I was married to, and it's a lot of the stuff hits very close to the bone. This feels like a very real long-distance relationship style album. A lot of this album seems, too, that it's dealing with his level of fame, about being black in largely white spaces. And again, just to make it clear, I'm quite aware that I'm paler than Tom Petty's butthole. Okay, I understand that, right? But so I'm just observing and I'm making observations. I'm not speaking from experience, I'm speaking from observation, right? So from what I can tell, a lot of the success, and I think this happens to a lot of black celebrities and powerful people, where they sort of, the higher up they go, the more and more they get ensconced in white spaces, which makes sense because of white supremacy. We're usually at the top. You keep going up, more and more guys who look like me. I don't know if Tom Petty's butthole was white. That was a shot at an improv joke. I don't think it worked out. You now have an image of your head. Somewhere up in heaven, Tom Petty's like, don't do me like that. So I think it's a lot about that ambiguity, that feeling, that loss, struggling with mortality, and that perspective, sort of a desire to understand our anthropological development. What were we before civilization? So that's a lot of big stuff right there. So I said it's not quite like the last two albums, and it's true. It doesn't feel thematically like it's exactly the same as the others, but it's his amazing ability to communicate so many interesting, deep ideas in a way where I bet, and this is the highest compliment you can give, you can just listen to this album and be like, that's a dope beat. Those are some dope rhymes, and then just move on with your day. You don't have to sit there with your pen in your mouth and oh, Kanji's Harvest, which is, by the way, how I listen to music. Now, Woods himself says, and this is on the Bandcamp description, that Maps is the story of the road, or roads taken and untaken, of living the dream and dreaming of another life. It's an album without trying to find your way home. No, an album about trying to find your way home after making your way home wherever you lay your head. So that's good. That's getting there. But I'm going to make a comparison, which, because the record company themselves reached out to me, I feel like maybe some elements of this review would get back to Woods himself. So I'm nervous to say what I'm going to say because it might seem insulting or reductive. Or it's deductive. Maybe I am Sherlock goddamn Holmes, because the way I see this album, let's say it this way. What I'm about to say is either intentional or unintentional. But for you, the listener, who loves hip-hop, I think that you will find that this album is a beautiful companion piece, a sort of reverse version of Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler, the Creator. This feels like it is paired. It feels like it's in conversation. And that's what happens with great art. Great artists have conversations with each other, sometimes unintentionally, without even knowing, without it being on the top of their head. Okay, even just the title, Maps. Call Me If You Get Lost. How do you get unlost? You have a map. But instead of this kind of somewhat romantic cover with the travel pass and all that stuff, we have this semi kind of hellish vision of a security card that you get on an airport, where you have to think about your own death and how are you going to crash and how you're going to get out of the plane. I think this album is a lot less Call Me If You Get Lost and a lot more, hey, I'm lost. I'm going to give you a call. I'm lost. I'm out here. I'm out here. Not like I'm out here in the gangster rap sense of I'm really out here shooting people. He's really out there in Bratislava in a hotel room waiting to go on for a show, trying to figure out what's going on with his life. The thing about Call Me If You Get Lost is the world that he presents is so beautiful. Even just this, the cover of the estate sale, just everything he's wearing is matched. The luggage matches. He's traveling. He's living well. He's got his Rolls Royce in which he pulls up. It's this beautiful idea that just calls you to adventure and calls you to travel. Maps is the opposite. Maps is not luxury. Maps is traveling on EasyJet. If you've ever traveled on EasyJet, you will know it'll make you wish for, what's that one called? America West. What's the bad airline we have in America? Well, what's one of them? I think it's America West. It makes you just, it's like, it's just a terrible, it's a bus. It's a bus with wings. You know, he's not sitting there arriving on a yacht. He's sleeping in an Uber. He's stuck in a layover for 10 hours. He's in a sort of weird reality of touring for people who are not superstars, people who are stars but not superstars. So, as such, it is not about this mystical journey of what is the nature of travel and seeing the world that Tyler presents. It's more the gritty emotional reality of leaving, arriving, and returning. Constantly, in every single one of these stages, there is something bittersweet. I'm obsessed with bittersweet. I'm a dad, you know, I've got 3 kids. One of them's a baby, but still, never too early. I constantly tell my kids that the best things in life are bittersweet. Nothing good in life is purely sweet. Just isn't, you know? Like that feeling of like loss and gaining, of disappointment and joy. That's all over this album. Just this disappointing, this joyful, bittersweet life. I almost, because there's so many different ways to frame a Woods album. You know, you can frame them all sorts of different ways, which makes my job interesting and fun. Well, this isn't my job. This is my hobby. My job is giving a French 1 final exam in like an hour and a half. I almost thought that you could sort of see this album like stand-up comedy. So if you watch a lot of stand-up comedy, and I do watch a lot of stand-up comedy, there are way too many jokes about airports, about airlines, about airline food, about hotels, because they talk about what they know. And what they know is going to the Funny Bone in Midland, Texas, and figuring out where to eat, and taking the plane there, and what experience is it, and do you take your shoes off, and what's the deal with airline food, you know? This album, I think you could say, almost has that feeling at times with these non-luxury travel narratives. But then there's the arriving in the other sense. So he's uncomfortable arriving where he arrives, but then there's also this arriving at a higher level of fame and having to deal with, frankly, people like me, okay? Having to deal with well-meaning, white intellectual types who think he is just peachy keen. And the distance that puts between him and the rest of the culture from which he came, and the distance that he feels from the people like other me, okay? That distance. So it's not really a super political album in the sense that he's not talking explicitly about negritude, as an example. He's not explicitly talking about colonialism, as an example. But he paints this world where you understand how uncomfortable white supremacy makes black celebrities. And we often think, or not we, but the world acts as though if you're rich and if you have fame, you have no problems. And this album reminds you that that's not the case. One second. I need to get Rousseau back in the frame. He's going to be popping in later. I haven't mentioned Kenny Segal yet. Oh, damn. That's it. I think it's some maybe NWA song where someone goes, "What makes the beat so goddamn funky?" I just kept saying that over and over again. Maybe it's Dre makes the beats so goddamn funky. Whatever it is, just these beats are so good, doing so many outstanding new things. I'm going to be at a loss of words at times describing. There's this great thing where the whole album has flow in its lyrics and its music, where sometimes musically the songs are connected, like a jazz to jazz song, or like a certain musical element will be followed up in little pairs, and then sometimes the lyrics follow, where he'll talk about fire in one song and then smoke the next, or he'll talk about a layover and then describe the layover. The whole thing has this beautiful flow, and a lot of that's helped by this amazing production by Kenny Segal, who, by the way, fun fact, there's an interview with Kenny Segal out there. It's got like 200 views. And in it, he talks about how bad he thinks that, or how much he does not like the new Kendrick Lamar album, which is interesting. I mean, his perspective is great. So I'm only saying that because it's a very good interview, and if I tell you that little juicy bit, you might go track it down, because it's quite interesting. So this whole album, right? It opens and it ends at home. Okay, so when I talk about a flow, this is a story. Okay, it starts at home in New York, and a New York that he is becoming increasingly alien to, despite the fact it is where he's from, or where he is. It's hard to say where he's from because he's so bicultural, but where he's from, for the sake of this, say where he's from, right? And then it ends with him returning, and in the middle it's all these meditations. So I'm going to give you my stamp, my example song, which I couldn't really pick just one. Frankly, this album is so good, it's so just click above the banana, above Upside Down Tyler, above Rousseau and Baudelaire, for the song Kenwood Speakers, the opening track. I'm picking this just because it's the first track, and I just want to get you listening to this album. This great ratty drum machine, super heavy bass. There's like this backwards sound. And again, I'm not just saying this to be cute, but I think this beat is in conversation with Paul Revere. I think if you listen to Paul Revere, the beat by Rick Rubin, and I think the Beastie Boys actually were the ones who turned the 808 backwards. There's a little bit of reverse sounds, but in general, I think it has that kind of feeling. And obviously, Paul Revere is one of the great rap beats of the 80s. Some like guitar sounds come in. There's almost like a faint echo of like Shook One's Part 2 with these descending lines in the back. And the thing is, this is not a typical beat for the album because there is no typical beat for the album. The highest compliment I can give Kenny Segal is that this album does not have a unified sound, but it is entirely unified. That's a hard thing to do. If you just want to have a jazz rap album and the whole thing is jazz, then you go, and then I can say that's a great jazz rap album. This album is never comfortable being in just one lane. It goes in all different places. There's only one other song that even sounds remotely like this. So what's this song about? This is about leaving tomorrow. That's how he starts off the whole album. Leaving tomorrow, but I've got time today. So he tells this whole story, and it's about living in New York, and it's about gentrification. It's about living in areas of white wealth. He says, I own a crumbling mansion. It's about to get gentrified. I'm not trying to leave empty-handed. So he's aware of the fact that the place where he has property is a place that is being gentrified. And then he describes it as Blue Eyes, White Walkers, and King's Landing, describing, I don't know, maybe it's Brooklyn? Maybe, I don't know actually where in the 5 boroughs he's describing, somewhere in New York City. Like, the idea of white walkers, like the idea of gentrifiers being white walkers, going from Whole Foods to Whole Foods, non-GMO brains, sitting there trying to eat non-GMO brains. And invading a neighborhood and taking over. It's a beautiful image. It's a kind of scary image. But what's interesting is that he's talking about that he is not going to leave empty-handed. He is trying to profit from this gentrification. His position in this gentrification is quite confusing. And I think that's on purpose. He has this whole thing about having veneers on his teeth, like N-word, we made it. And he's all like, it's this whole feeling of like, he's made it, but then where has he made it? It's a great line. Gotta remember, God's a hater. Very funny line. I reviewed this album before the lyrics were up on Rap Genius, so I had to do my best. And then there's this great beat change. Again, Kenny Segal just... And then I have to quote this entire mysterious story. Dinner party with the neighbors. Their apartment is renovated. Skate wing, brown butter, and capers. Sprig of thyme. Heavy pours of natural wine. I turned up the music incrementally and told mischievous lies. I whispered in the host's ear. I heard they found him the next morning. Hose run from the exhaust pipe. So it's this amazing, almost horror story. This feels like... could be like a Jordan Peele story or something. I don't know what. It's almost a horror story of like a black dinner guest convincing the white gentrified hosts to kill themselves. Sort of like appearing like a friendly interaction, but in reality, this sort of like simmering anger at the fact that these White Walkers have taken over King's Landing. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's some of the more political side to this album. It's great. We then get the next song, Soft Landing. I don't know. Is this on purpose where he's connecting this to King's Landing? King's Landing, Soft Landing. Okay. The beat's got this great guitar sound. We hear the sound of a flight attendant. Sorry. My brother always called them air waitresses, which is gendered and terrible. But I have it stuck in my head all the time because I thought it was so funny when I was a 10-year-old little misogynist. Flight attendants, great show with Haley Kuko on HBO. The sound of a flight attendant speaking, he's like trying to get these drinks. The whole thing has kind of a woozy vibe to it, like it's kind of like a drunken bass. It's kind of chilled out, and here we have the story taking shape. He takes off, he's on tour. He talks about it ruins the whole day when my baby mother mad at me. This is one of these themes that's going to keep coming through, where you now understand that he has a kid and the kid's at home and he's going through all these experiences and he's fighting with his baby's mother. As far as I can tell, there is an intimate relationship. There is respect and love, and also a lot of conflict and difficulty. And I can tell you, when he says that it ruins the whole day when my baby mother mad at me, it ruins your whole day. When you travel and the person, your partner, however you want to define that partner, is mad at you, like you're just like, sweet. Is that the Leaning Tower of Pisa? And I have to check my texts. Oh, wow, that's cool. Is that like a Shinto temple? Like that's just what happens. A single death is a tragedy, but eggs make omelets. Statistics, how we look in war casualty. Killing is one thing, what sticks is how casually. So here it gets a little more political, talking about death. There's a lot of themes of death and of Black Death and of the casualness that Black Death is spoken about in music and in media and in life. And then we have this hook. Birds fly high, you know how I feel. This seems like it might be a drug reference, but I don't think it is. I mean, it can be too, whatever. He can be saying he's high that way. But it's more that he's in an airplane. And there's another element of this album, which is that of survivor's guilt. So he has made it out of a bad situation. He's made it into better situations. And even though he's wildly uncomfortable in those new situations, he has made it out. That's how he's feeling. He's on this airplane. We then get to the second verse, which just has his range of references. This is why I like him personally, because you can't be just an egghead and get all of his verses. Because, yeah, he references Richard Attenborough, the BBC narrator of many documentaries. He mentions New York beat poet William Burroughs. So you think you know everything. But then if you don't know Joe Burrow, the quarterback for the Bengals, some quarterback, he mentions him as well. That great variety of references. And then this great airline attendant sample arriving in Amsterdam, and then you hear "Thank you for flying EasyJet," which is just... Didn't EasyJet... I thought EasyJet closed down because they had so many crashes. I don't know. Next track is called Soundcheck, featuring Kel Chris, which I know his name is Quelly Chris, but I'm a French professor, so I'm going to say Kel. This beat is so insane that my son just couldn't believe it. He was getting allergy shots. So we were driving into Rochester. And he's like, wait, what is this beat? Like, this is like so many samples being layered up. This is insane, because this is bass and the drums, and it's like what sound like random, almost like bell sounds, like maybe even the bell of a cymbal. Ding, ding. Later, some keyboards come in. He's like, Dad, I gotta find this song. Where is it? And I was like, hasn't been released yet, son. Oh, you think he didn't text his friends that his dad's reviewing an album that hasn't come out yet? That's how I flex. The algorithm may hate me now. By the way, did you know that? Can you please smash the like bucket and subscribe and sign up for notifications so you can see whatever weird title I initially title these things before they get their real title? Because the algorithm decided they hated me earlier this week, and all my views are in the trizash. Did I say trizash? This is why I need a script. I would need to edit that out. They're in the garbage. So this song, right? This unbelievable beat. Maybe the best beat on the album, except for the other beats on the album, which are the best beats on the album. Kenny Segal. Here we are now. We've arrived and we're at the day of the show. And here he's talking about not going to Soundcheck. Now, if you don't know, if you're not a performer, musicians, comedians, everybody who performs on a stage is asked by the venue, by the people who run the soundboard, to do a sound check, where they come in like 3 hours, 4 hours before the show, and they get on a microphone, they say, mic check, 1, 2, what is this? Sibilance. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan, and then, they test out all the sound, and they make sure that it sounds good. It's an annoying thing that you have to do, and everybody does it. But he doesn't. And he's telling you he's not going to do it. Please be advised I will not be in Soundcheck. I will not be in the green room if it's too lit. I might watch the sunset over your city from a parapet or a park bench. What a diva, huh? He thinks he's too good, you know? He thinks he's too good to do a Soundcheck. You know, who does he think he is? Kanye West? You know? Who does he think he is? Why is he being such an impetuous, childish diva? Well, this is probably my favorite track on the album politically, because it put me on a train to understand why is he talking about not going to Soundcheck. He's not going to Soundcheck because he needs to insist on his humanity. Okay? He's not being a diva. As a matter of fact, when artists are late, they are insisting on their own humanity. When David Letterman tells his subordinates not to look him in the eye, it is because he is insisting on his own humanity. Let me explain my train of thought here. Fame is dehumanizing. When you become famous, you are no longer a person, you are a famous person. I don't know that. I'm not famous, but I can observe, right? The same way I don't know the black experience, I don't know the fame experience, okay? But think about it. I just remember this one line where Mick Jagger described being famous as meeting people all day. And think about being Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, Billy Woods, to a much lesser extent, obviously not as famous, but your entire day is meeting people who will tell the story of meeting you for the rest of their life. So they become dehumanized to you because they're just another person, but you aren't a person to them. You are a story. You are something, and everybody's trying to get a piece of you. When you are famous, everybody is trying to get a piece, okay? And that goes for the journalists and the people who are trying to get interviews. That goes for the people who are going to the show and trying to get a picture afterwards, who are trying to get a set list, who are trying to get an autograph. Powerful and successful people are constantly surrounded by people trying to get a piece of them, while also who resent them for their fame. Constantly trying to test them, constantly trying to put them in their box, constantly trying to see will they bend. There's a whole subset of people who are around famous people who are trying to see what can they get famous people to do. How can we bend Mr. Knows-It-All into a certain box? So fame is a system that dehumanizes, but we have this added element of race, where society, through white supremacy, dehumanizes black men already. There's already a dehumanization that has taken place, especially when it is someone who is in a largely white space much of the time. This whole sense of otherness is amplified. So when he's not going to Soundcheck, it's not that he's lazy and doesn't care about his craft or doesn't care about the sound. Of course he does. I mean, listen to this guy's lyrics. He's very insistent on excellence. But it's that he's not going to do some rinky-tink thing because somebody thinks he needs to do it. He's pretty sure he doesn't need to do it, so he's not going to do it. You should be honored by his lateness, that he would even show up for this fake-ish. I get it. You know, this is hard because we hate famous people, you know? Like, we hate famous people. What could you do? We hate them and we love them. We resent them, you know? But I think it's particularly interesting in sort of studies of black American art and black celebrities, how different black celebrities have different relationships to that kind of fame and that feeling that everyone's trying to get something from them. I've told the story before. I got my doctorate in Santa Barbara, and Dave Chappelle was in town, and I had a friend whose cousin worked at the Biltmore where he was staying. And they told me when he was like out and about walking around with his family. So my friend and I, we get in our car and we drive down to the Biltmore right on the coast of the Pacific Ocean, and we get out and start walking through, and there off in the distance, Dave Chappelle's kids are on like a little Razor scooter, and he's walking, and he's got 2 11-foot bodyguards, and we're sitting there and we're getting all ready to jump up and talk, and right at that moment, like, I was struck by lightning. It wasn't that I was afraid of his 11-foot bodyguards, it was that I realized the obscenity of what I was doing in that moment. Like, I almost fell down to the ground and apologized to him for being just another face, just another not coincidentally white privileged face asking him for something. When he went crazy and went off to Africa, he wasn't going crazy. He was making a stake for his own humanity in this inhumane world. Okay? That's why he's not going to the Soundcheck. And isn't that fun? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that an interesting way to think about this? To think about celebrities who you hear of as being so mean? Like, I think about that David Letterman saying, don't look him in the eye. Like, it must be crazy. When you're famous, everybody must be trying to look you in the eye all the time because they can't believe it's you. They need to check. Is that you? Is that him? It must be exhausting. I even have an example from this review. So the person from the record company sort of, I guess maybe I referred to Billy Woods by the first half of his stage name in the last video. I don't remember doing it, but I must have, because he went on to some degree, with some insistence, that if I refer to Billy Woods as anything, call him Woods. Okay, and the amount that this was insisted upon seemed a bit strange to me because I don't even remember saying anything. I don't have a script. I don't edit, so I don't know what I said or didn't say. But in this context, it makes sense. This is not an impetuous celebrity. This is somebody who has something that means something to them, and every single time that someone goes against that, it's like trying to prove that they have something on him, that they're not going to do it. I referred to him as Kanye West earlier. I apologize. I referred to Ye that way, you know? That you have to constantly show that you are a human being who deserves respect, who deserves to be listened to. I happen to be on a random rabbit hole, and I really, if you find this kind of theme interesting, please take my advice and watch the Michael Douglas interview with Sly Stone and Muhammad Ali. So Sly Stone was the guest host with Mike Douglas, the great soul psychedelic singer, you know? And Muhammad Ali comes out. Muhammad Ali is like the most angry man in the world. He is not smiling. He is not floating like a butterfly, singing like a bee. He is coming out and attacking other black entertainers for all the he. That's what he refers to it, kind of clowning around, being a clown in public. And Sly Stone is kind of fighting against that. And I swear, I shouldn't, A, real intellectual, B, a real black intellectual needs to do a study of this because I couldn't possibly understand what's happening here other than just the most surface level. But it's this amazing fight where Muhammad Ali understands that he shouldn't fight his brother on stage, but he gets so mad. Like, you can see how upset he is that Sly Stone is fighting against him. And it's really just this sense of, like, how do you maintain your integrity? How do you maintain your humanity in a system that constantly wants you to be a clown who dances on stage for other people? Now, at the end, he says that every victory is Pyrrhic. Every live show, forget the lyric. So this has got me stumped because he says Pyrrhic, and the word is Pyrrhic, but Woods uses tons of words in this album that I've never heard of. Right? He uses backograms, something like that, some kind of weird word that I'd never heard before. Like his vocabulary is far past mine, you know. But like it's pronounced Pyrrhic, so why is he saying Pyrrhic? And so I don't know if this is, one, it could be a mistake, which is unlikely. But as always, if anyone ever mispronounces a word, never make fun of them, because that means that they've read it and not heard it. And that means they're reading. So, like that means they're searching for knowledge. So anybody who mispronounces a word is not stupid. They just have not heard the word spoken, right? Or is he like trying to draw attention to it? Or does Pyrrhic have some other meaning? I mean, Pyrrhic victory, first of all. Sorry, this song I knew was going to take me out. Pyrrhus, if you've ever read Racine's Berenice, Pyrrhus was a king who defeated the Romans a couple hundred years, BC. He defeated the Romans, but he lost a lot of his troops. So it's a victory where you win, but you lose more than you win. So the idea of fame being a Pyrrhic victory is gorgeous, because if you're losing your humanity but gaining money and fame, you've won the game, but you've lost more than you've won. So I don't know. Wait, there's a third option. Maybe it is pronounced Pyrrhic. Could you tell me in the comments? A, is it Segal? Make sure I'm right on Kenny Segal. And B, is it pronounced Pyrrhic or Pyrrhic? Or is Pyrrhic just an alternate pronunciation that I hadn't thought of? Or is he saying something else? Is it not? Is there a different kind of victory? Is Pyrrhic different than Pyrrhic? This is why these are all rough drafts. Next song's called Rapper Weed. It's a continuation of the last beat, where it is kind of heavy-footed shuffle, tinkling pianos, but it continues the incidental bells, that we heard in the last song that I was talking about that drove my son crazy. The beat also strongly reminds me of 30 Hours, the Andre 3000 and Kanye song off of Life of Pablo. And even the first line, this is like 72 degrees. I think 30 Hours is actually a pretty good companion piece to this album as well, because that's a song about having a long distance relationship and the difficulties there. Here he's getting out of the sort of story, the narrative here, and these are about general mental health difficulties considering his mortality. This album is painfully existential, very much about the nature of existence, how long are you going to live, what is your artistic legacy. It's almost just like free association poetry. I wasn't rude, scrawled doodles while the beat loops, slurp noodles out of clear soup, delivery fee is oof. It's funny. Nike store in Fairfax doesn't even sell shoes. I don't know if that's true. I assume he's in Los Angeles. Fairfax, like the famous street famous cross street in Los Angeles. Then he has this great verse where he talks about this great chorus. It seems like it's sort of about weed, but not really. He talks about buying weed from people who are on the couches on their phones, sort of like a very real image of what I imagine it's like buying large quantities of weeds from strangers. But then he has this whole beautiful line where he just keeps rhyming in and ack. When it's my time, no need to pass the hat, just throw me in when the fire's good and crackling. So I think what he's saying is, it's about burning weed and getting high and all that. This is a bummer of an album. This is not a good, hey, smoking weed is fun. It's very much just kind of a dark album on that front. But it's that his body should be burned when it's his time, meaning not his time to, smoke weed or pass the hat, meaning give money. It's just he needs to be burned on this pile. In that way, he's in conversation with, was it Miss Pac-Man? Whatever the last Pac-Man song is off of Lupe Fiasco's last album, where we have a similar image of someone burning on a pile. But it's this idea of, what is he? Are rappers just weed, just things to be consumed? And, because that's my main issue with people who talk so much about drugs and how great drugs are, is that fundamentally it's just a consumer thing. It's just some people buy throw pillows, and some people buy weed, and some people drink beer, and some people drink weed. Right? It's just sort of a consuming thing, and this is sort of about that sense of the fire's good and crackling. While also, please remember, fire is going to be an important theme in this album because fire represents domesticity. Okay, fire represents a taming of the human species. Trust me, this album is also about that. So we had Rapper Weed, which is a fire, and it's about fire crackling. I think you even hear the sound of crackling in the back. And now we have Blue Smoke, Fire Smoke, a full jazz beat, fast jazz, drums and bass, some hints of saxophone in here. Basically full-on poetry reading. This is a sort of out of story. It's like this interesting thing about, I think it's mainly about being an artist and what it's like to be an artist and what it's like to be making rap music. Maybe it's the beat needs to be here. The lyrics, it's hard to really fit them in the rest of the album. But again, tell me in the comments how you see it, because the album only been out for a couple hours. Over time, symbols eclipse the things they symbolize. Listen. Dude, just come on. Symbols eclipse the things they symbolize. He's making it really hard for somebody with a PhD who studied semiotics and all that stuff. It's like he's writing for me, okay? It's okay. It's just too much. It's too much. I want to go back to grad school and tell Professor Nessie and be like, oh, thank you for teaching me about all this great stuff and semiotics and all that. Listen to this rap verse, and then get into it and then start talking about it with her. Again, it's the fault of academics that we don't have more imagination and are not able to actually see the full picture, and we can only focus on the things that we can relate to because we spent too much time thinking about things like semiotics, the study of signs. Been on this N-word for months. I think all just rhymes. I'm still peaking, and if it's just us speaking these N-words on the decline, ha ha. So an interesting idea here where he's basically boasting about being a better rapper than them. And then he just talks about pork belly. There's a lot of food in this album. Most of it is Vietnamese food. The pork belly was brined, braised, and then deep fried. Fresh mint, Thai basil, pickled watermelon rind, julienne scallions, other alliums gave the pepper mill one grind. This is a very real description. My wife is a great cook, great chef, whatever the word is, that's the good one. She's a great one of those, and she loves great food. You know, she's from Yugoslavia, so she has... And I was like, can you make pork belly? And she's like, no. I was like, why not? Because there's nowhere in this town to get pork belly with skin on it. So, anyways, I found a butcher. Shh, don't tell her. I'm going to go to Fairport. I'm going to go to the butcher. I'm going to order pork belly. I'm going to get the watermelon rind and the Thai basil, and we're going to eat this. Check out my Instagram. You're going to see me eating pork belly next week, thanks to this review. Because pork belly is, I'm sure it's delicious. I've never eaten it. Next song is called Bad Dreams. Oh, by the way, she totally signs off as a good chef. She signs off on that verse. That is exactly how she would serve it. Bad dreams are only dreams. And then here, like, now the music is connecting. Now we're in jazz land. This is kind of a slower jazz song, like a jazz saxophone, basically drumless. This kind of connects, like I'm telling you, these little connections between songs. Here he is traveling. He seems maybe back at home. This is the existential crisis of travel. In addition to burning himself, there's this theme of eating his brain, like having his brain be eaten, which might even connect to the White Walkers now that I think about it. But this is fascinating because this is that sense you get when you travel, that you become a new person. And maybe, if you're a rapper, you maybe feel like you are distancing yourself from your culture. Right? Jet lag, I can't quite grab the new me, old self, dozing in an aisle seat, Emirates where I left him, daydream, treacherous, ephemera. So it's this idea that he is leaving his old self behind and becoming this new traveling person in these new spaces. Brain exposed to the elements, lift my skull top off delicate, bone china chafing dish, absent-minded break time like bricks, thoughts is cinder blocks. Oh my God. So really, I'm listen, if you're talking about eating brains, two things come to mind. One, the monster verse from Nicki Minaj, which is actually on, don't tell my class, but the monster verse is on the final exam in my hip hop class. So that's going to be, sorry, I got this plant. This plant is shaking in the wind. It's making noise. It's bugging me. So you think about that, or you think about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where they eat the monkey brains at the top, and that's the image that I have here. I have the image of Billy Woods, like being underneath the table and a button, like, has that kind of image, and I think that's on purpose. The idea of a skull being a bone china chafing dish, this is where his imaginativity. I sound like Mike Tyson. His imaginativity. This is where his creativity and imagination, his imaginativity, trademark Professor Skye, really shows up. And this idea of his brains being eaten, his essence being eaten, being consumed because of his fame and because of his greatness. Next track is called Babylon by Bus. Now the last track ended almost barely a song, like free jazzy end. Here, Kenny Segal has this great junky drum beat that doesn't really catch up. There's this faraway sounds in the back. There's an overpronounced sound of a drum machine, a very amazing low piano sound, kind of an attacking approach. And why is it called Babylon by Bus? This is a very good live album, a great Bob Marley live album. If you've never heard the live version of Exodus, it's better than the studio version. This is the definitive version, in my opinion, of the song Exodus. But it's a live album. It's about touring. Getting to Babylon, the sort of imagined place in sort of Jah mythology, but arriving by bus. So That's how he's saying. Basically, that's the roughness of that travel is implied there is in here. And then this is that existential thing. Look, listen, I'm not swimming in time. I'm not swimming in tomorrows. I know the time was borrowed. Just really contemplating his own nature and his own existence. And I think this is part of the travel narrative. The one way I would say he's very connected to Tyler, the Creator, the way that he's very connected to me when I was a snot-nosed 20-year-old going to Paris abroad for my junior year, is that when you go abroad, your brain just, like, the way that you understand the world just explodes. It really does. Like, that kind of travel, it really changes you for the better. But also it gets a lot deeper. Like the first time I really had an existential crisis was on the plane flying to Paris. I took an airline called Tower Air, which is actually worse than EasyJet. It's the worst airline I've ever taken. It's very weird. It's like raining and snowing in New York, where I flew out from. It's sort of like a budget El Al, so there's all these rabbi who are like, I don't know what there's some kind of thing, like wrapping up their arms. So it's kind of very weird scene kind of going on here. And it's a very rough flight, and I was traveling, and the whole time I was there, I was reading Existentialist. I was really thinking about the nature of life. I think he is expressing that kind of broadening of her. Now, obviously, he's a very traveled person anyways, because he's bicultural at least, right? But this kind of travel is coming in there. We then get a guest verse by Shrapnel, and I don't know Shrapnel at all, so they're great. They're very funny. They made a reference this morning, while I was sitting there with my baby in the pit. We have a little baby pit. I did find the lyrics. I was able to figure out which one was Curly Castro and which one is Prem Rock from Shrapnel, because I don't know their voices well enough. And he makes a reference, and on Lyric Genius it says, "Handsome with my b-boy, true goy is my DJ." That's not the line. You don't know your handsome boy modeling school. So this album, if you're a hip hop head, by the way, and you don't know this album, you are an ignoramus. Okay? This is one of the absolute greatest underground hip hop albums, one of the best produced albums of all time. Dan the Automator, Prince Paul. It's unbelievable. And it features a song called, is it called The PJs or is it called The Projects? I forget what it's called. I think it's not Waterworld, not Once Again, not Holy Calamity. Yeah, it's called The Projects, parentheses, PJs. And it's with Trugoy, rest in peace, from De La Soul. So it's called Handsome Boy Modeling School, Handsome with my B-boy, Trugoy in the PJs. It's a reference to the song. It's like another planet. It's a great song. It's actually funny because this song was so ingrained in my mentality that when rappers were starting to rap about PJs, meaning private jets, I thought they were talking about The Projects because I thought they were talking about the Trugoy song. They weren't. Sorry, I have like a hair in my eyeball. This is why I really need to edit. I'll just stay there. Just a great line. And then Prem Rock, mouth dry on that south road to Damascus. Better call Saul a cab. It's getting bad with traffic. Like Better Call Saul is one thing, but Saul was on his road to Damascus. The biblical figure when he had his conversion. It's just a funny line. Then there's a great kind of beat alteration. It gets epic with these horns. And then once again, Woods proves to us that he knows his history super well and that he's able to rap about history in a fun, engaging, and mysterious way. Caught him lacking on 9/11. I lie down like V.I. Lenin. People don't want the truth. They want me to tell them that grandma went to heaven. So first of all, caught him lacking on 9/11 implies sort of tacit, like, it's sort of that America was caught lacking. That's a way of thinking about 9/11. And then making reference to a great villain in American history, V.I. Lenin. It's funny because I talked about this to my wife, about this line, and she was like, "Oh, like the sleep-ins when John and Yoko lie down in bed. Is that what he means by lie like Lenin?" I was like, no, V.I. Lenin, Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov Lenin. Because it turns out that she thought I was saying Lenin, like John Lennon, not Lenin, which is how you should be pronouncing V.I. Lenin. There's a nya sound on the end. So, anyways, kind of funny there. Real Lebowski moment. This end here is the most energetic that we get. Billy Woods. He's just really up there and really hyped. It kind of stops a little bit unexpectedly. And then we get to the song Year Zero. Kenny Segal has produced maybe the beat of the year. I don't know. There have been some good beats this year, but this beat, okay, it is reminiscent of Incarcerated Scarface's that kind of fuzzy octave, but this is an all-time rap beat. It takes that kind of ominous octave play. It has like these weird detuned horn sounds, this like odd, like, oh my god, it is such an amazing beat. It's like it's incomprehensible how badass this beat is, because then later on it does this thing where it takes this sound, which is the sound of a guitar chord that is on, and the amp is too loud, and the guitar chord is touching against something metal, but it's not plugged into the guitar. It's the sound that an amp makes when you plug it in and go like that. Like that sound is when, before it's plugged in all the way, but it's touched that metal, it makes that sound. He uses that sound as part of his beat. It's just amazing. And then the verses are, listen, Danny Brown's on it, so it's probably going to be everyone's favorite song, and it's an amazing song. But really, it's Woods' verse that's just astounding. And this is where we get into that sort of theme of misanthropy. So, if you don't know, anthro refers to people, right? So, mis means hatred of. So that's why misogyny is hating women. Gyne, like gynecologist, you know. Misogyny, hating men. Misandrist, right? Andro refers to men. So misanthropy is the hatred of people. The opposite is philanthropist, which is the love of people, which, by the way, is one of our worst words in the English language. Because whenever we say philanthropist, we usually mean some billionaire who gives 1/10 of his stolen money to give back to the people so they can have an opera house. The real philanthropists are school teachers, okay? Real philanthropists are social workers. Those are the people who love humanity. Anyways, this is a misanthropist song about hatred of humanity, but also sort of more about kind of the sort of anthropological failure, like the failure of humanity, like we've made it here and we haven't done it. I quit looking for solutions. I bought a pistol, learned how to use it. You can't fix stupid. Apes stood up and walked to the future, a march of progress and a hunchback in front of the computer. So this whole image of our evolution has messed up. We were standing up and now we're hunched over the computer. Sooner or later, it's going to be two unrelated active shooters. This is the image that I cannot get out of my head. My wife is from Yugoslavia. There have been 2 mass shootings in Serbia in the last 3 days. It's very upsetting to see this kind of thing spreading throughout the world. It's natural with that many guns. Anyways, but still, I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if this is what Woods is trying to do. But what I hear is the idea that like the world is going to end when 2 unrelated active shooters face each other. That like the randomness of mass shootings, that there's going to be 2 who run into each other. And like at that moment, it's all going to end. Hangman, one look, take all my measurements, my taxes, pay, police brutality settlements, quicksand in every direction, so go ahead and step on in. The pain of knowing that and it's true, every single police settlement, every single time that a police officer beat somebody near to death or killed somebody and had to pay a fine for killing somebody, that fee was paid by us, was paid by taxpayers. There's not some other place where it comes from. And then we get to this chorus. Kids, you and your friends going to have to start again. We're effed up. Poisoned everything we touch. Withered and died. Burned it down with us inside. Burn it to the ground. Make sure we don't survive. This idea of kids is like talking to all humanity. Kids, you and your friends are going to have to start again. This is saying all of humanity is completely done. We have just lost. It's just start over. Start over, burn, kill all human beings, and start over again. I don't know why, but this reminds me of one of my favorite sketches from I Think You Should Leave, Baby of the Year, where the sketch ends with Sam Richardson's character saying these following lines.
You know, this was dumb. Dump it. Trash it. This was garbage.
One more time.
You know, this was dumb. Dump it. Trash it. This was garbage.
All right, you know what? This is dumb. Dump it. Trash it. This one's garbage. It's like he's saying that about all of humanity. Dump it, trash it, this one's garbage. And then we get to Danny Brown's verse. So we get that guitar chord sound, some like cinematic grinding guitars in the back. Danny Brown is amazing here. A high voice, cool. He's all punchlines. Like there's no beat to start, and then eventually the beat comes back in, and you just want to live in this beat. If I could, I would have this beat on a 6-hour loop, and I'd have it playing behind me at all times. Eventually the beat comes back in. Not for nothing, I'm gonna leave with something. Connects a little bit to that first track, like trying to profit off of gentrification. I'm about to flip the script. Can't just cut the budget. La 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 la. Can't tell me nothing. Here he's quoting Can't Tell Me Nothing by Kanye, but instead of saying it, la 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 la, can't tell me nothing, he just plows through the lines. And then he has like the obnoxious glory of Danny Brown cannot be beat. Who you thought it really was, what you thought it wasn't, ends lying like your cousin when you know he really wasn't. Tell him to drive through like 20-piece nuggets, broke like the ice cream machine, you rubbish. You broke like when I was driving to get, the allergy shot for my son. We both just broke out laughing. Broke like the ice cream machine right after nuggets. Like we know that the ice cream machine's always broken at McDonald's. There's videos about it. It's fascinating. And it's this beautiful line. And then Danny Brown saves it. And he's always able to do this. He's always able to be silly and goofy and then come back with a line that makes you, to quote Arsenio Hall, makes you go, I ain't worried about the hate. Just wonder where the love gone. Like I'm going to think about this line for the rest of my life. Because it's one thing to worry about hate. But worry, like he's not upset about people hating him, but he feels a lack of love. So that song talked about getting hanged. And then here we have a song called Hangman, okay? All these things are linked. Uses the hiss of like an ocean tide, a drone in the back, the simple cutout drum beat, ethereal and dark. There might even be sounds of actual seagulls, not Kenny Segal, but seagulls, like, caw, caw, watch it now. And here we have just this really sad song about this feeling of being out of body. And I think it's just me. It's just me. What do I know? I get the sense this might be jet-lagged, inspired depression because he's describing not sleeping and hovering outside of himself. And when you're jet-lagged, that's actually how you feel. But also he's not sleeping because he's fighting with his partner, whatever form that partner takes. He's talking about having new lovers, but it's not really joy. The first line is Matisse without the colors. And if you don't know Henri Matisse's work, Matisse's work is defined by the colors. So saying Matisse without the colors is like saying, I don't know, a dog without a tail. Whatever it is, it's defined by its bright colors. So he's describing his life this way. I don't sleep, I hover outside myself, watching my body survive. And then it's sort of continuing from the previous song with more misanthropy. People paralyzed by the lies they tell theyself to make their lives more manageable. I know the count correct, but I count on sleepless nights to be tangible. Any day could be the day they frog walk you in manacles. The chorus by Segal has this insane low horn punch. Might be like a tuba or a keyboard, I don't know what. Paper and pencil, I wrote the verse like Hangman. He has this whole other verse talking about the past is like a black Rubik's Cube. Billy Woods, I'm 58 minutes and 33 seconds into this video, and you just said the past is like a black Rubik's Cube. I'm now going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out, are you just being super poetic? And that doesn't mean like that can't be described in words, or can that be described in words? And I need more time to figure out how to describe the idea of describing the past like a black Rubik's Cube. Like it's a puzzle, but that it doesn't really matter because it's always solved, but also it can't be solved. Is that what it's about? The past is like a black Rubik's Cube? I love a black Rubik's Cube. I hate those things. My whole life. Do you know how to do it? No. I know how to get it that one side is like, has two missing. That's as close as I get. Time-lapse running in place like old cartoons. I'm going to booth like Cocoon. There is another theme of aging in here. Cocoon was a Ron Howard movie about Wilford Brimley getting younger by going into a cocoon. Sort of a boomer movie, but an interesting idea that he's getting older, but he gets younger when he goes into the booth. Nice kind of short bowed strings here, little production moments. And then the end of the track has a quote. I don't know what it's from, but this really ties together with Soundcheck, and it reminds me of Muhammad Ali talking to Sly Stone on the Mike Douglas show. If you black and you're around white folks, don't have too much fun. You just grin a little bit, don't grin all the time. N-word. So this is that idea that like you have to watch yourself. You can't be too happy, and you also can't be too sad. And it's I think whenever you are in a space that is not your natural habitat, you are uncomfortable and you are more self-conscious. That is amplified when you are othered in other ways. So if I'm at a fancy dinner party, I don't feel at ease in a fancy dinner party. I don't really know how to act, but that's not amplified by other factors, other ways that I am othered by society. So it's fascinating. Baby steps here, unsettling high sounds, maybe flutes, like going left to right, pluck strings, gets more and more developed. And then again, Kenny Segal, I don't know how he does that, has this great sweet low bass melody. And then we get the reality of the road. Call me if you get lost. So he talks about taking a helicopter from the yacht to the helipad in Nice, and he gets into his Bugatti Roadster, and he kind of drives up and down the coast, and he stops at the Gucci store, and he buys like $30,000 worth of clothing, and then he pulls up to the VIP, behind, and he goes and does the show. Oh no, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong album. He talks about being stuck in Kansas and Lincoln, Nebraska, and having a 10-hour layover in Chicago. Because that's the reality of touring for most touring musicians. And he says, I'm not going to be able to do it. This is that feeling, the truth of the road. Has this hilarious opening. I actually took a $300 Uber to a show, too detailed to be not true. Slept in the back like Future. Might as well be a Maybach. So the cover of I Never Liked You by Future is probably my favorite rap album cover of the last decade. I love it. It's Future with eye shades on in the back of a Maybach, right? And so here he is describing showing up in an expensive Uber, the opposite of a Maybach. Very funny. Later he goes on to another I can't figure it out. So does he have a doctorate in history and literary theory and colonial theory? Like what? Like how does he find time for these to know as much as he knows while also being such a successful artist? I mean, a lot of times artists think they're smarter than they are. Like think of like Brad Pitt, but it makes sense because they have to spend so much time being entertainers, being artists, being creators that they can't spend that time being big brain people. But anyways, Dien Ben Phu, my ops pass each other coming and leaving, my pho streaming, oxtail, lemongrass, steak still bleeding. So Dien Ben Phu was the battle where France gave up on what they called Indochine, with the French Indochina, which then would become Vietnam, and we'd later go in and try to free them from communism. And Dien Bien Phu was this great battle where the Vietnamese beat the French. My son was telling me about this because he's the history guy in our family. They threw spears and took down helicopters with spears. And the French were smarter than the Americans, and they said, well, our reputation... unfairly. Our reputation is that we cut and run. No better time than to cut and run if we have helicopters being downed by spears. We never should have gone. Doesn't matter. But it's this fascinating mixture of like the food, right? The pho. So he misspells Pyrrhic, but then he he pronounces pho correctly. He didn't mispronounce Pyrrhic. I still don't. That's going to just keep bugging me. Anyways, there's this great odd voice of Benjamin Booker singing in the background. Then we finally have Elucid, or as I used to call him, Elukid. Real Professor Skye fans know the scoop there. His voice just always goes so well with Woods. A very weird line, wax moon, hover, full as a diva cup. Diva cups are like menstrual products to like catch menstrual blood. They're like little cups. So, word up, man. Just Elucid showing real solidarity with his female listeners, describing something that most men are afraid to even say the word tampon, much less consider a diva cup. And then he manages to rhyme it with eat a dick up till you hiccup. So that the great I think Too Short was the first person to say it, but Snoop Dogg made it popular. I think that's the transmission of the expression "eat a dick up till you hiccup." But still, rhyming that with Diva Cup, that's the beauty of Elucid. The Layover, this is what I call just a shut-up drum beat, just such a good drum beat, great jazz piano, some like percussion tambourines on the one of an 8-bar loop, piano sample that extends beautifully at times. The back, it has like the opening half of the piano loop is kind of spacey, then the back half is kind of decisive and punctuated, and he loops that part at times. There's a weird beat change at the end with this like sick raspy saxophone, and here we're connected because we just talked about the layover in the last song, and then the song's called A Layover, right? Just this insane opening lines. And it feels like this is again about his position in society. Already knew the option was lose-lose. Baby, that's nothing new. Just make it easier to choose. It's up to you. If it's on your mind, don't ask. Don't need to hunt for clues. Phone demagnetized, the key to the room. Magpies plucked the jewels out my tombs. You know, this feels like this could be also like fighting with his partner, or this could be lose-lose of travel. I don't know. But just this opening line is such a beautiful thought. And then there's more survivor guilt. The blocks spin, the car doesn't move, Black Death, rubbernecking, pale faces, handkerchiefs soaked in perfume, posthumous YouTube views, lying at the bottom of a well, looking up at the circle of blue. I had the great public intellectual FD Signifier come into my hip-hop class last week, and I had him just talk about Black Death, because better him than me, obviously. Frankly, he should have taught the whole class, but he doesn't work at my university. And he talked a lot about this, the way that pale faces, white people, consume Black Death, and especially on YouTube, and especially the idea that like the kinds of things that he has escaped, the kind of life that's described by Pop Smoke or an Ali Choppa or any whatever, King Von or Chief Keef, whatever, this kind of life is what he's escaped. And it gets posthumous views on YouTube. In that way, that's also in conversation. I think this song's in conversation with On Phone. I have Drill Music in Zion over there. I'm going to do it. You know what? Because Lupe Fiasco deserves more credit for that damn album. So I see it right here on my shelf. And this is one of my favorite reviews that I did. So yeah. So I think it's also in conversation with Drill Music in Zion with the final track on Phone M. Was it Miss Pac-Man? It was Miss Mural, not Miss Pac-Man. You already wrote that in the comments. This hilarious chorus, Walking with a Panther, Going Back to Cali. Okay, listen, Walking with a Panther is an LL Cool J album. I do have that in my CD collection, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. Deion Sanders, I'm Going Back the Other Way. So he's making reference to the song Going Back to Cali, which was quoted by Notorious B.I.G., but was actually originally an LL Cool J song off the album Walking with the Panther. So that's where that comes from. Deion Sanders, I'm Going Back the Other Way. Deion Sanders is a famous football and baseball player who won a Super Bowl with San Francisco, and then the next year went to Dallas, so he went the other way. So Billy Woods is going to California, and Deion Sanders is going back the other way, which were also still kind of a little bit connected to the Dien Bien Phu line, right? The Dien Bien Phu line, where my ops pass each other coming and leaving. Interesting there, kind of going either way. So he won back-to-back Super Bowls in different teams, San Francisco and then Dallas. Then, as if Billy Woods wasn't trying to make my wife happy enough, there's an entire verse that's framed by Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain, another great communicator, starts off with the line Parts Unknown, which is the name of an Anthony Bourdain show, and later he references Having No Reservation. He references Gwar. Damn it, I have a Gwar CD I could also show up. Like Fatty Arbuckle. Gwar on stage, and then we get another image of the brain being eaten. Big jar when you donate my brain, spicy chili oil, let that bad boy marinate. So he's talking about his brain again being taken out. I think this is maybe about the artistic process, and what it is you're opening up your brain, your soul, your spirit, and you're sharing it with people, and they're consuming it like White Walkers, right? No Reservations walked in like Bourdain. And then he says, before history, I made fire in a cave. And this is where he's doing this thing again, where the same way that he was talking about humanity failing and having to start over again, he positions himself as a prehistorical human being. And this is going to happen a lot more in the back half of this album. Next track is FaceTime. High Mr. Rogers xylophone, sloppy drums, muted trumpet that rings high. I couldn't figure out why this was the single for the album, and then I heard the chorus. This gorgeous saxophone that's matched with Samuel Herring, who's singing. And this is that existential difficulty that is prompted by travel, and long-distance relationships, and just the feeling of just lost. Ready to die, it's no biggie. So he's talking about that. That's connecting with the last song. The last song talked about going back to Cali, which was a song that Big quoted. I swear this is intentional, that he's leaving these little breadcrumbs that in your mind, if you're a hip-hop fan, you sort of connect them in your head. Because when you hear going back to Cali, admit it, you don't think of LL Cool J. Even if he said walking with a Panther, you're not thinking of LL Cool J, you're thinking of Biggie. So right there, Ready to Die, it's no biggie. Play stupid games, you flying easy jet. Bratislava, Utrecht. So this is the reality of an international tour. This reality is actually sadder than you think it is. I'm going to Bratislava this summer, an EasyJet. So the joke is you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. That's the saying. So the stupid game is the game of traveling. And of being a rock star, of being a rap star. So he's on EasyJet, which we already heard back in track 2, because everything on this damn album's connected. I'm getting nervous that I'm going to miss my exam because I have too much to say. Then later in the verse, he said, stupid prizes, couples therapy on Zoom, it's a train wreck. Oh. So the stupid game is traveling and trying to make money on the road and trying to be a rap star. And the prize is that his relationship is falling apart. Zoom couples therapy. That is itself a losing game right there. Absolutely gorgeous. He makes reference to Picasso, Playboy Cardi, and Bertolucci in the same verse. 3 hobos, 1 clarinet. I think that's a reference to a Picasso painting. And then he talks about this feeling of traveling and having a whole bunch of young people partying and kind of hating it. And that's the thing, is that I've been there. I like to say that youth hostels made me hostile towards youth. There's a party going outside, some half, some overdressed. They're going off during a Playboy Cardi set. Now they're in the halls partying, checking their phones, bass shaking the walls. I'm smoking alone in a cardigan thinking of home. He's sitting there and everyone else out there is partying and he's by himself and he's trying to move on. I'm thinking about you. I'm supposed to be thinking about other things. He is trapped in this position. He's waiting for his phone to ping. It's this chaotic truth of a long distance relationship and when you're traveling. Billy Woods has described something which I wish I had when I was 20 years old, because this is exactly how I felt when I was traveling and when people were partying and I was alone in my room waiting for my phone to ping. Agriculture is a lot like the last song, dreamy keyboards, some percussion, almost sound of chains, a weird voice in the back, crackle of vinyl, and here we get back to the agricultural themes. We're now talking about agriculture, not just travel, but agriculture. This goes back to this guy's idea, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's concept of society and culture and what ruined society. Human beings were happy and they were free, and then they invented metallurgy and agriculture and they created society. Once society was created, inequality was created. So when he's talking about agriculture, he's partly referencing that, the end of the hunter-gatherer era. Grab a fistful of soil, my hand's been dirty since before I could grasp time, before we had names. He's placing himself as an atemporal being that is before existence. It's about farming, but also about the corruption that's implied in farming. Stooped in the coop to trade them with a neighbor for fresh bread. Rousseau also tells us that the first time one person had 2 of something that someone else needed, inequality was born, right? That was that point. There are things we never saw. I still don't want to see more. I let the dog out the screen door. That's the end of this line. That's my favorite part. I want to go back to grad school because I want to write an essay about Rousseau and Billy Woods, because that's what this is about. Letting the dog out the screen door. The dog represents humanity before civilization, before society, who's wild and humps, okay? Who's wild and humps and pees and eats and hunts, right? That's what a dog is. But we've domesticated dogs and put them inside, get them waiting for the food, waiting for the approval, waiting for the pat on the head. So letting the dog out the screen door is symbolic of letting the beast out, letting the savage that we all have within us, that we all used to be before we decided to enclose a piece of land and say, this is mine. Rousseau talks about that as well. That's what he's talking about here. That's the problem with agriculture. It's not get back to the land. It's get back to the before there was land and there was just land. Get back to being a dog let out the screen door. Houdini is continuing along with a little bit of the sense of the survivor's guilt, chopped up guitar, stuttered drum lines, another beautiful beat. This is his day off from a tour. It's about his life not really being super happy, just having a day off, like not knowing what to do, being at a Costco in the Midwest, and then maybe talking about being further out, maybe being in Europe, gazpacho on the veranda. Oh, my gazpacho soup is here. Trust me, I know it's hot in the fields. Jimmy Wapo draped over his steering wheel. Jimmy Wapo is a rapper who was killed a couple years ago, so we have this survivor's guilt that he is having gazpacho and kind of complaining about it while someone else died over the field. It's amazing. I was high all day, I escaped. That's the idea. Later he says, where I'm from, you don't see fireflies. It's his most conversational style rapping, and this whole album is on this one song, and you really understand that sense that he has of where he's traveling, and he has all this privilege, and he can sort of relate to it, but also he can't, but also he survived. Waiting Around featuring Aesop Rock, or as it mistyped here, Aesop Ruck. Ridiculously funky drumline, guitar in the back, shortened meters. We're now back to travel time, and this is the thing. Travel is waiting. Luxury is not having to wait. Why are private jets so valuable? It's not because they're nice jets and because they have leather interiors. It's because you don't have to wait. You just get on the plane and go. Why is it so great being rich? Because you don't have to wait till 2 o'clock to check into your hotel room because it's already there. Reality is that traveling is about waiting if you're not one of the super rich. When you ask about touring, I get the crux of the question, but the bulk of the answers have another dimension. Aesop Rock takes the whole question of touring way out there. And then we have, I'm not a big fan of this chorus, but I do like how it samples Method Man from the track Protect Your Neck. Bus shots a big band like We Got Time to Kill, because they do have time to kill, because this is all about just killing time, wasting time. Killing time, wasting time when you have a short period of time on Earth. In my room, had a view, safe full of euros. I miss having nothing to lose. 22, wandering around Amsterdam, 2200 in my shoe. Jay-Z and the Discman, 2 grams in the wood, toss it in the canal if it starts to canoe. So this whole story about remembering what it was like being 22 and being in Amsterdam when he had nothing to lose, back when it was easier to have nothing to lose than to have more to lose. And obviously, he's saying 22, 22. He's making reference. What's he listening to in the Discman? Okay, not this. This is Jay-Z's second album, Volume 1. I can't find my copy of Reasonable Doubt. He's listening to Reasonable Doubt with the song 22 Twos. Again, you have to really know hip-hop to really enjoy this album as much as possible. Has a beautiful verse where he references Kanji's Harvest, which is very important to Ethiops. Talks more about fancy foods. Connects the next song with this kind of bittersweet feeling where he has this there's an expatriate who he hears speak American. It's a thing that happens when you travel where you get attached to other Americans who might be lame, but you're connected in that. NYC Tap Water. We're now home. This is it. This is the last track of the album. I know there's one more, but this is spiritually the last track on the album. Slowed down, warbled beat, soulful, loud guitar writing. Funky drum way behind, underwater. The bass becomes more pronounced. Outrageously satisfying bass line. Kenny Segal wrote an outrageously satisfying bass line, which I didn't even notice till the second time. This is about coming home, the bittersweet feeling of coming home. This connects to the first track. The first track of the album was about leaving New York. Now he's come back. People from New York City need to shut the F up about their tap water. It's fine. New York City tap water is famous for being the best tap water in the world. It is better than tap water in most cities. It's better than it has a right to be for such a populous city. But still, New Yorkers just, oh my God, just shut up about tap water. But it's a symbolic thing. One sip of New York City tap water, I'm back dialed in, last car, last train. I miss this place till I'm back. This is that sense. I miss this place until I'm back. Now that he's back home, the bittersweet. He missed being home when he was away, and now he misses being away when he's home. That's the bittersweet reality of travel, the bittersweet reality of life. He talks about Kennedy Fried. Only people who've been to New York City know what Kennedy Fried Chicken is. It's an imitation of Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's actually probably better. KFC's kind of gross. And then he talks about gentrification, and that's why I'm bringing up Baudelaire. Now, I talked about Baudelaire when I talked about Tyler, the Creator. That's part of the reason why I'm here. But he has this beautiful poem called Le Cygne, where he talks about the changes that happened to Paris. In the middle of the 1800s, Napoleon III got afraid of how Paris was too small and cramped, so he just put in all these big boulevards, just wiped the whole city out and rebuilt it in the Paris that you imagine now. And Baudelaire wrote this poem about how he missed the old Paris, how he felt a sense of exile in his own home. New people in this building, where I used to cop, it's now a blue and cream. $400 Japanese jeans, they're actually very comfortable. So where he used to buy drugs is now Blue and Cream, which is this ridiculously upscale store that sells clothing. Don Cheadle might be living in his apartment. It's that sense of loss. Alas, the form of a city changes faster than the hearts of man. That's a quote from Baudelaire, which I'm translating off the top of my head. And that's the sense that he has. That's the end of the album. The final track opens up the window, okay? A good conclusion, closes the door and opens up a window. Now that he's home, what's going to happen? His existential dread is not gone. He's still at home, but he now has something else. He's returned with his baby's mother. He's returned with his partner, and he is here, and he is where it actually matters with his kid. I'm in the park with the baby on the swing, but it hits me crazy. Anything at all could happen to him. Climbing higher and higher in the jungle gym sometimes, pushing other kids, tear streaked apologies, bald fist, it's a trip. I know this is something we did. Kiss her on the lips. I watch him grow, wondering how much longer I've got to live. So now that he sees that he will live forever on in the form of his own child and through his own art, how long is he actually going to live? All of the existential dread from this entire album is reaching its apogee and finalizing here, and he gets to think about where is he going to go, how long is he going to live. That's the whole journey that he's taken us on. These are my Patreons. They help give me money. Special shout out to At Large Auteur and Ken Karayuki, who asked for a special shout out because they love Billy Woods too. Thank you to Fat Possum Records. And thank you for this beautiful album. Dear God, I have to rush to my work. Actually, let me just see if I can figure out what time it is. Because I might, how much, how bad is it? What time is it? Where's my damn clock? Oh, I'm okay. I just got to go right now. Okay. Till next time, what did you think of the album? There's the camera.